West Rural St. Andrew to offer a word of invocation. Mrs. Flynn?
Let us bow our heads. We are grateful for the opportunity to be here today. We are asking for guidance during our proceedings this afternoon as we attend to the business of the people of Jamaica. We ask for continued guidance as we venture from the Parliament building home. These we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. We have apologies for absence from the Honorable Rudyard Spencer, the Honorable Zabia Main, Mrs. Marissa Dalrymple Philibert, and from Dr. Norman Dunn. I am Ronald Thwaites, the Member of Parliament for Central Kingston and the chairman of this committee. And I, as indicated, Mrs. Juliet Cuthbert Flynn, who moved the motion number 61 of 2018, the subject of our discussion, is from West Rural St. Andrew. We will defer, maybe, the reading and confirmation of the minutes until we have a quorum. That's the minutes of the meeting of February the 27th, 2019. Our matters for discussion today continue on the issue of proposed amendments to the Offences Against the Person Act in respect of abortion. And we have scheduled presentations from Reverend Mr. Maurice Saunders, Dr. Cherie Simpson, Ms. Caris Mosley of the Christian Legal Center, and from the group Jamaica Coalition for a Healthy Society. It is now 18 past 2, and I would like us to complete this meeting by 4:30. I have an engagement thereafter, and therefore this will require the cooperation of the presenters, and particularly to invite you to seek to complete your presentation in 15 minutes, with the exception of the Jamaica Coalition for a Healthy Society, who was earlier confirmed needing a little longer for a video presentation, I believe, that they have, and which will take them a little longer, which I gather the committee is willing to countenance. Welcome to all those in the gallery. We welcome your silent participation. Reverend Mr. Saunders. Thank you.
Chairman, that means I'm on?
Yes, you are. Once the red light is on.
Thank you, Chairman, and the single member, other member who is here. Chairman and member, I appear for unborn children. For the record, I should say, perhaps my name is already mentioned. I am Maurice C. Saunders, and I'm an attorney at law. And so I use the language in a way of the advocate when I say I appear on behalf of the unborn children, some of whom have names already given to them by their parents. The theme of my submissions is quite simple. It is in the form of a question. Why in anyone's name should anyone want to kill my innocent clients? Instead, I suggest let us adopt the theme, celebrate life, and let us act accordingly in terms of legislation. And this debate to be really about a right to choose. A right to choose what? A right to do with my body? What really is this debate about? Or this debate to be about the right to life and the protection of that right? Members, let us ask ourselves in a serious and rational tone, what could possibly be the reason or reasons for wanting to end the life of the child in the womb? This is a question that we must ask in a sober, rational, cool, calm way. I, for one, cannot understand what could justify this passionate desire to kill my innocent clients. After all, it is not the child who is the cause of any suffering the mother goes through. And we are mindful that the actual physical pain and discomfort of the mother, whether with an unwanted pregnancy or with a wanted pregnancy, might not really be much different. There are real differences, but are the differences sufficient to justify, and I stress justify, because this is a justice issue, the killing of the unborn child? To do so, to kill the unborn child, or to attempt to justify the killing, is merely to heap one tragedy upon another. Those of us who read Shakespeare can think of all the tragedies. And those of us who live today, we see all the tragedies. We see gangs at war, tribes at war, and we see revenge on top of revenge, tragedy on top of tragedy. And heaping tragedy on top of suffering, or tragedy on top of hardship, cannot be the solution. We have enough problems in this world to want to add more tragedy to hardships. The solution has to be found within the boundaries of that first problem, and that is the problem that arises where a woman finds herself pregnant and she hadn't planned for it. But before addressing that, let us start with the truth. Let us remember that line in our anthem, justice, truth be ours forever. The truth is important because, again, in any debate, arguing any particular word, any philosophy, any phrase that's not based on truth is usually a waste of time, a waste of energy. It ends up being misdirected and leading us up the wrong path. My argument for the preservation of the life of the infant, unborn infant, rests on the solid truth, the fact that human life begins at conception when the woman's egg is fertilized by the man's sperm. The argument of the proposer of the motion, Member of Parliament Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn and her supporters, rests on the false claim that a woman has a human right to choose, to remove, and to remove such parts of her body as she chooses to remove, and that the child in the womb is a part of her body. It seems to me, and I submit, that if her claim is untrue, and we say it is untrue and not factual, then their whole basis for legalizing abortion must also fail and cannot justify abortion and the serious violation of the human dignity of the child. What is really before this committee and before this parliament are really two separate problems. Even although they are related problems, I contend that they are separate. So let us say problem A and problem B, as you would get in an examination or any task. Okay? That is the problem. A is the problem of the pregnant woman who does not want the consequence of being pregnant. We must recognize and understand her suffering and her position. It is real. But let us open our eyes and look at the whole. So there's problem A that we are required to answer and to deal with. B is a different problem, a second problem. B is the problem of the baby in the womb. The proposer and the backers of the motion have totally ignored problem B. They haven't answered that question at all. It is what is to happen to the innocent child in the womb. In their recitals to the motion, it doesn't even recognize that there is any child in the womb at all. That is a major flaw. It seems to me that those proposing that something be done, that there be some change in the law, at least recite that as a fact. Okay? Let them tell this committee what exactly is abortion, what it involves, what is to happen to the innocent child. Let them tell you and let them tell this nation what is to happen. Let me briefly look at abortion and murder. What is abortion? I adopt the definition that abortion may be defined as a deliberate termination of pregnancy by killing the unborn. What is murder? Well, I pick up the old language of Lord Coke, which is, he says, where a person of sound memory and discretion unlawfully kills any reasonable creature in being, and under the king's peace, with malice aforethought, either express or implied, the death following within a year and a day. Basically, it is pretty much the same as abortion. It's a deliberate killing, right, with the intention attached to it. Okay? And speaking of intention, I don't have time to go into it this evening, but if you look at my paper proper, there is something in there relating to intention, in which I argue that those who say that our law is so hard and fast, there is something in there in it that softens the situation with the use of the word intention. I can explain later if asked. But let me return to truth, Mr. Chairman. Abortion and the use of language, the word abortion. To abort really means to cut short, to shorten, or to bring to an end, to halt, to stop something in its growth. But abortion is not simply the shortening, the stopping, the halting of the life of an infant human being in the womb. It is, in fact, the deliberate killing of the child. But by continuously and repetitiously using the expression abortion rather than killing, over time, we are distracted from thinking of the act as a killing to thinking of something softer and something milder, and something which is really personal to the woman, something that fits in with the body parts argument. It is what it is. It is a killing of an innocent human being. You see, members, how the debate is framed, the words and the language used is intended to have you see in a certain way, whilst not seeing or ignoring the real truths of the matter. And the real truth of the matter is that it involves a huge injustice. In time we'll find out, some will say, it involves killings of thousands, millions. It is a crime against humanity that we are allowing to happen, certainly in other parts of the world. And that is what changing our legislation would do. I am asking you, I'm asking us to open our eyes and look and see, so that if you were to see a pregnant woman and you are asked, how many people do you see? You would say 2 rather than 1. I am asking you to accept that the sperm that swims towards the egg is life, and the egg is life. And when the fertilized sperm becomes human life, I ask you to accept that the fertilized egg at conception is indeed human life, not cat life, not dog life, not fish life, not any other kind of life, but human life. I refer you to the back of the paper presented and look at the pictures towards the back. I'm sorry they're not up on the screens. And ponder the growth of the fertilized egg in the mother's womb, the child. Bear in mind that at 11 weeks, a baby can kick, yawn, and hiccup. During week 12, the reflexes and the nerve cells develop. A baby has eyelids at 8 weeks. Fingernails begin to form at week 10. At 11 weeks, a baby can kick, stretch, and as I've said, hiccup. So, the burden I would want to suggest, Mr. Chairman, the onus of proof, it may not be written in any rule, but I would say justice requires that there is a burden on the mover of the motion to prove that the child is a body part rather than a human child and must be open, and the burden is upon those asserting that it is a body part to show that it is a body part and not a child. Speaking of part, a part can only be a part of a whole. Does a child look like a part of a woman's body? What part is that? So whose feet are the child's? Whose hands, whose fingers? Are they the mother's? Would that mean that the woman, the pregnant woman that is, has 20 fingers, 20 toes, 4 arms, 4 legs, etc.? And she would be pregnant with what then, or with whom? Ask those questions honestly. Mr. Chairman, how much time? Oh, what? There is a strategy on the part of some lobbies, most of them outside of Jamaica, getting our legislators, getting the state to be blinded and to look the other way. And this is another example of how language can be skillfully used to get us to not see and to look the other way, by getting us to ignore the fact that abortion is the killing of an unborn child, not just a medical procedure that might bring some temporary relief to the pregnant woman. Many of us, especially lawmakers, become just that, myopic, and tend to see just that way, that the child in the womb is a part of the woman's body, and that she is the one, the only one, who has a right to choose to remove that body part. And seeing it that way, it is easy to understand how lawmakers in some other countries have ended up passing laws allowing abortion. That is why it is so important to get the definitions, the subject and the content of the debate right. Otherwise, you are likely to be misled away from the real truth and what the subject of the debate really is about. Motive is important, Mr. Chairman. Motive is important. And members should be aware that there are those in this world who are motivated by philosophies and a culture of death, who believe that the world is overpopulated and that there are too many weak and poor people and unhealthy people who give birth to children, and whose motive, therefore, is to control the situation by preventing the birth. You should be aware of Margaret Sanger and Planned Parenthood. We should find out about it. No change will be made in the law unless you are aware of these lobbies and these movements and these things. Let us open our eyes and look. We should ensure we're not just following some Western fad and we suffer for it in the years to come. We should bear in mind our cultural perspectives. We must be careful not to follow the aspects of Western culture that are not truly our way of life. There will always be the temptation, especially among the adventurous young who go off to study and reside in those Western places. But we know that matters of sexual life, family bonding, we are really a people of African and Christian lifestyles. Marcus Garvey and Sam Sharp, etc., will be concerned about what is happening. We have to bear in mind what is this 2030 vision that we have. If we're going to change it in this big way, because it will have serious effect on family, we should tell the people from early. 20 years from today, we will be wanting again to blame some colonial or independent power or influence in making any gravely erroneous decision.
Nearing your time, Mr. Saunders, please.
Pardon me, Chairman?
Nearing your time.
Near my time. Thank you for the warning. And so, the key, Chairman, to this problem is really to answer question A separately from B. In relation to question A, some answers, some solutions have already been suggested. They include counseling. Counseling the woman who has an unwanted pregnancy through that journey. I would also suggest group support. Some of us know of a thing called Alcoholics Anonymous, and there are many other groups in societies that help each other. I think group support in this kind of thing, perhaps through the Ministry of Health, with government support, would go a long way. But the solution is within that framework, not to look over to B and to answer that question by saying, you know what happened? The answer is to kill the child. Even in the case of rape, the considerations are the same. Why kill the child? Already there's a criminal and penal code which has provisions for catching the rapist, for punishing the rapist. And we're talking about at a time when there are new introductions to the criminal system that include restorative justice. Isn't it possible to have a system in which the convicted person can contribute to the maintenance of that child, can contribute something more? But the answer isn't to kill the child. That's why I say there can be no justification. I have fought for persons who have been convicted, big people have been convicted of crimes. Some mostly innocent, some maybe not innocent. But because their lives are important and our laws should be seeking to protect life and to say something about the dignity of human life, we should keep laws that support life and the dignity of human life. More so, we have an innocent child who has done nothing. We just can't justify killing the child, Mr. Chairman. No way. And so I close by just referring to the paper I had presented, the very last page, by drawing attention to the final submissions and recommendations. Because having found the truth, what should we do? I'm suggesting, number one, that nothing of any real consequence, and this is at page 16, of any real consequence has changed since the last deliberation of a Joint Select Committee of Parliament, and the motion be not forwarded to another Joint Select Committee at this time while the motion is stayed. Two, that in view of the inadequacies, the incompleteness of the motion then not having referred to the fact that there is a child and what abortion would mean for that innocent child, and what do you do to help that innocent child? In the absence of that the member be invited to withdraw the motion and to redraft the same, including content that would be reflective of the absent truths and facts referred to in the paper. Three, that in the event of any hearing and debate, that in any event that any debate on abortion be preceded by a well-informed discussion, conversation, research, including calling experts from whatever part of the world. It's so important that we shouldn't avoid any such expense and debate in relation to our assertion as a truth and fact that human life begins at conception, and that in the interim, we, the government and the people, embark on a massive, sustained, perhaps 1 year or more, public education campaign informing and teaching our people of when human life begins and on how to love and respect human life and to love and respect each other. And that the law, in particular section 72 and 73 of the Offences Against a Person Act, remains in place as is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and member.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saunders. I have a question, but Mrs. Gawthorpe-Flynn, would you like to ask any? May I? Okay. Mr. Saunders, could you address us on the extent to which, well, you've put forward a very strong moral position. To what extent do you argue that in a secular society that the law should, in fact, defend a particular moral position such as you adhere to in relation to abortion? What are the limits of the law, and particularly having regard to the sections that you wish to have us have Jamaica retain? These are criminal statutes with particular punishments.
Sorry, maybe I'm missing something. You could elaborate a little bit more for me, Mr. Chairman?
Sure. The question I have is, you have advanced a moral position.
That's right.
Is the law of the land bound to follow that moral position, or a moral position, binding everyone in such an issue? What are the limits of the criminal law? Let me give you an expand. Clearly, if one accepts the view that you have, that the life of the unborn child is, or the fetus is an unborn child, then to say that it's a choice would eventually open the door for similar decisions to be taken regarding life at different stages. And clearly the criminal law, without dispute, precludes such forfeiture of life. On the other hand, there are a large majority of people who feel that adultery is a grave moral wrong. Would you be proposing in such a comparable situation that the law, the criminal law, forbid and punish that? One of the, I'm pointing out to you all here that there is a central issue beyond whether you are in favor of relaxing the provisions on abortion or not. There is a question as to what are the limits and the extents of the civil law in defending or in relaxing a moral, what is a moral dictate. And we would value your advice now or in a subsequent written presentation on that. And that is an invitation coming from me to everybody.
Mr. Chairman, my recall of the way moral legislation, if I may call it that, has gone over the years in Jamaica, it's, and in addition to legislation behavior, you could say, is that there has been a slide. So we are where we are now. To use the example that you used, I haven't addressed my mind to going back the other way. But where I am, is that especially when it comes to matters of life and death, there's no application to anything else. This is life, the most important of all the human rights, and punishments for other things that are on the scale less severe, less deadly. Going back in another direction, as I have said, is not something I've addressed my mind to, and perhaps at this time in our growth, in our development, wouldn't be the right time to be addressing that.
I think I'm understanding your position that this, because abortion, as you understand it, involves the taking of an innocent life, that would place it within the realm of actions that would attract the attention of the law, and particularly of the criminal law. I think that's what you're saying. There's much more I think you might want to think about and address us on, or others. But then I'd like a follow-up question, if I might. Because the present statute provides for a maximum sentence of life imprisonment for anyone who secures an abortion or assists in the securing of an abortion. Do you defend that?
As a practitioner, Mr. Chairman, I know that the judges in our courts don't usually give the maximum of what is prescribed in the particular act or legislation.
They are at liberty too.
They are at liberty too, but I could easily see an appeal succeeding if it were done and it was outside of their guidelines, outside of anything. And in any event, I think I did address it in my paper, suggesting that perhaps the judges themselves could arrive at guidelines using such cases as they are in the past, and having regard to the particular circumstances, arrive at sentences that would be palatable. But you know, Mr. Chairman, you see, what has brought us here, this motion, what it tells you is that the legislation is effective. It's effective in deterring what some think would be a big growth in abortions were we to change the law as it is.
How do you arrive at that?
Can I interject?
Yeah, certainly.
What has brought this motion here is a young lady who died because she sought an abortion on the ground. That is what brought us here. That is why I am here with this motion once again. So let us not forget that somebody actually died. And there are many other women who go through hardship or who may die and different things happen to them, who seek abortion on the ground. And that is why we're here today.
According to the proposition put forward by the Reverend Mr. Saunders, the tragic instance that you mentioned, there would have been 2 people who died. And what I'm trying to ascertain from, I'll be asking this question of everyone for advice, because this society must decide it. We can't leave it to the judges. For our sins, we as legislators have to come clearly on this. Yes? First, ought this to be a crime? It may be morally reprehensible, but ought every morally reprehensible action be a crime under the law, is the question I first asked you. And the second question, you having answered that, is the present prescription and penalty under law appropriate for us to continue? Now, I realize these are hard questions, but I must say that we are obliged to ask for guidance on them.
Yes, Chairman. And I repeat what I said before, that the sentence or the sentence on the books is not too much. But you know what is a real answer to the Member of Parliament's concern, which I referred to as problem A? The real answer is this: if we were to build a culture in which a pregnant woman going to getting the health center or the hospital or to a doctor, in our society, I know that many, perhaps not all, perhaps not most, start to do exercises, they start to prepare for the birth, for the labor. They start to prepare from early. Perhaps the better thing is to have a culture of life in which all mothers, in whatever circumstances, attend classes or are ministered to, counseled, and given such counseling and help for that journey so that she can get through the pregnancy and the labor in as best health as possible, including emotional, psychological, physical help, and proceed that way rather than try to do what the lady she spoke about did. That really is the better approach.
Encouraging to think more on those questions, but thank you for that. Mrs. Scott-Flynn, please.
Yes, I want to kind of just follow up on what you say. You made several points, and one of the things you mentioned was rape. Are you okay that if a woman is raped or a young girl is raped and she chooses abortion, should she be punished and serve time in jail? Because that's what the law says.
I would answer it this way by countering with a question. How was the killing of a child justified?
No, I'm asking you the question to answer me. It's either a yes or a no. If a young girl or a young lady is raped and she chose, that's her choice, to get an abortion on the ground or pay for it somewhere else legally in another country, should she be punished or serve time in by serving time in jail?
Well, let me start with something. If she went to another country, there would be a problem with evidence. I don't know where the evidence would come from. But unless she brought...
In Jamaica.
In Jamaica. Again, though, assuming that the witnesses are willing and were to come forward, yes, if the law has to be applied, the law has to be applied. However, I look back at ourselves as a society, and I say before getting to that, just as you see the University of the West Indies or the KPH mobile unit going around to mothers who have given birth and helping them as young mothers, just as you see before labor, before birth, mothers going to do their exercises, strengthen the abdominals, strengthen the muscles, or seeing their doctors to make sure everything is all right, in the same way that we as a society should find the means that they can get emotional, psychological support and encouragement, because the child has its own set of rights, and we want to encourage life, don't we? We do, don't we?
Mr. Chairman, you said you were asking if you could get opinions from us. Could I interject? Is that possible?
Are you going to present later, Dr. West? We'll allow you to do that then.
Were you asking me? I was reading begging, while you were talking.
I was begging the question, yes.
What was the question?
We want to encourage life.
We all believe in life.
And
I believe in life.
And you want to encourage that.
I believe in life.
And it's paramount. Without human life, there can be no other human rights. The right to life is the foremost and most important of all rights. We agree.
We agree. Can I just continue, because I know we have a time limit. Will you accept that there are many truths, or in your opinion, your truth, your secular truth, is the only truth?
My secular truth? Not following you. No, there are certain things I said. Life begins at conception. That's true. That's a fact.
No, you said many things, and you mentioned something about truth, and I want to know if your truth is the only truth, and that everybody should accept that truth.
No, there are some things that are just absolutely true. I am a human being, am I not? That's true.
You also mentioned about a rapist contributing to the child. If a young girl is raped, that what the law should do is to seek out the person, and possibly also have, psychological help for that woman or that child. Many of us have never been raped, and so we can't put ourselves in a position of a young woman or young girl to ask or to say this is what should be done. I almost want to ask a controversial question, because I think, to put it that way, that it's that easy for a woman to just, especially a young girl, to get raped, which is traumatic, and then to just blow it off, and she gets pregnant, to just blow it off and said, just give her some psychological, care and let her get over it. And I think that is what I'm hearing from you, or that is what I heard from you.
That's not what I intended. It is hard. It is difficult.
It is difficult.
Pregnancy, period, is difficult. And that's why a woman who is pregnant is both a patient and a joy to mankind, to peoplekind. They are both. Worse yet, if she has been raped. It is horrible. It is terrible. It is wrong. It is a violation of her human dignity. But that said, why go piece up my innocent client, my child in the womb? Why pull off his toe, his arm, his leg, his parts? Can't be justified.
Are you okay with killing the mother whose life is in danger, who is pregnant? Are you also okay with that, with killing her?
Killing her? No.
No, because that's the word you use. That's the word you use. We say we should stop using abortion, but because it's really killing of the fetus. Are you okay that if a mother's life is in danger, that she should be killed?
No, I'm not okay with killing anybody.
No, I'm asking you a question.
And I'm answering.
Are you okay that if a mother's life is in danger and she's pregnant, and one of the ways to have her out of that danger is to perform an abortion, which is illegal in our country at this time? Are you okay with that mother being killed?
No, I'm not okay with the mother being killed. It's not necessary to kill the mother. That's my understanding.
So can you explain to us then what would then happen to the mother or the child if it is that the doctor said the mother's life is in danger and the mother will not live if she carries through with this pregnancy?
They should attempt to save both. But I tell you what.
And how do you do that?
I see medical experts around. I believe they will better explain to this committee. But I still say it's not necessary. From little I know, not necessary to kill the mother.
What is the little that you do know?
Medical people are trained to save life, to protect life, to look after life. And this is what I think.
So what you're telling me is a 6-week-old, or if a mother finds out she's pregnant and she's 6 weeks pregnant or 8 weeks pregnant, you're saying that somehow the doctor can perform some sort of a miracle to allow that child to live?
Oh, yes, if you call it miracle, yes. Mm-hmm.
And you believe that?
Oh, yes, certainly. Yes, it's possible to try at least, but not to kill.
Are you, one last question. Are you aware that Mississippi, I think they have possibly the strictest law in the United States at this time. Are you aware that they have different statutory definition of legal abortion, and one is to preserve the mother's life if pregnancy is a result of rape or incest, or if a mother's life is in danger, and they have one of the strictest abortion laws in the United States. Would you be willing to see any of that take place in Jamaica by looking at the laws that we have now, which punishes a mother and also the doctor for trying to have procuring an abortion? Would you be willing to look at any of those situations at all, or are you would want the law to stay as it is?
If you look at Section 72, look at the word intention. I suspect it takes that kind of thing into account. That said,
what sort of thing in account? You mean incest, rape,
no,
or the mother's life is in danger?
No. It speaks of the intention of the person.
The intention is to procure an abortion. That's the intention, period. There can be no other intention but to procure an abortion.
No, there could be other intentions.
And those would be?
To not procure an abortion, to try to bring to good health the baby in the womb, and to maintain and bring to good health the mother as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saunders.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members.
May I note the presence of Member of Parliament Michael Stewart from South Manchester. Thank you for coming. And Mrs. Cuthbert-Flynn, would you please endorse a motion that all of the proceedings so far, before we had a full quorum, may now be ratified? Yes.
I so move.
And I second, and there being no objections, I'm sure. That places us in good order. Thank you. Exciting stuff. It's 3 o'clock, running a little late. Dr. Simpson, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Dr. Cherie Simpson, please introduce yourself and proceed. And may I implore you, notwithstanding the precedent set, to maintain the time constraints.
Thank you. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for giving me this opportunity to share from my experiences as a medical doctor who has worked as a general practitioner for over 35 years. Now, I have a petition here signed by 45 doctors, which I will read and leave for you. Okay? We, the undersigned physicians, make the following declarations. It is a scientific fact that human life begins at conception. This is a biological certainty. The zygote, embryo, fetus, neonate, infant, adolescent, adult, and elderly are expressions of the same human being in different stages of development. We subscribe to the World Medical Association Declaration of Geneva, 1948, which states, I will maintain the utmost respect for human life from the moment of conception, even under threat. I will not use my medical knowledge contrary to the laws of humanity. The proposed bill attempts to make lawful the killing of a human being under a wide range of deliberately vague or unspecified conditions. Further, the proposed bill represents a threat to doctors who refuse to participate in this act in any way. We assert that the deliberate killing of an innocent human being is always ethically and medically unacceptable. In the unusual instance where the continuation of a pregnancy is a threat to the mother's life, we support measures to terminate the pregnancy by the delivery of the baby and to give both mother and newborn all available medical care. We are committed to applying our knowledge and skills in order to identify and implement measures to improve the physical, social, psychological, and mental health of women without betraying our calling to protect, preserve, and prolong life. I wanted also, before I started my presentation, to leave with you the models of an 11 and 12-week baby, fetus, and also a photograph of a baby that's 6 or 7 weeks. And I just wondered if I could hand it out. It's okay?
Orderly, can you just please?
Yeah. And then this is the petition. Thank you. I will be giving a summary or a very short version of my original presentation due to the 15-minute constraint. Okay. The first point I wanted to address is related to the term safe abortion. The abortion procedure is a dangerous and unpredictable procedure, whether done by a gynecologist in a hospital, even in a first world country. The risk of death, damaged cervix, womb, infection, excess bleeding is always a possibility. The baby in the uterus was never intended to come out before 9 months through uterine contraction that opens the cervix, expels the baby and placenta, and stops excess bleeding. When you interfere with this process, you can damage many organs. Legalizing it will not make it safe. Women still die in the USA. I know of a woman who died in Jamaica from an abortion done by a gynecologist in a hospital. There are other risks to abortions that we cannot ignore. The risk for breast cancer, cervical cancer, severe depression, and a host of psychological problems, including a high risk for suicide and drug abuse. I know of a patient who was a daughter of a patient of mine who became pregnant in university. She had an abortion. The father had declared it wasn't his child, and she felt pressured. She had the abortion. She bled. It was done by a gynecologist. She bled for over 1 month. She became depressed. She constantly made a bed for this baby that did not exist, telling people not to trouble her baby. She never completed her university. She never worked. She died 20 years after the abortion with a heart attack. Her life stopped at the abortion. In my 35 years of working in private practice and in medical centers, I have seen well over 100 women with untimely pregnancies. Less than 1% was a result of rape. More than 95 of these women kept their babies. I want to now bring to your attention a few of the patients that have been saved from death and trauma by counseling and supporting them through the initial panic and fear that an untimely pregnancy meant for them. There was a patient who came to my office, and she was 18 years old, and she had been raped. And she came in, and she had missed her period, and we were doing the pregnancy test, and I was secretly praying that it would come back negative. Well, it came positive, and when I told her this test was positive, she started crying, her sister crying, I started crying. And we were all wondering, and she was looking at me, saying, give me something, now give me something. And in that, I looked at her. She was a Christian, and I looked at her and I said, you're carrying a baby, and you're not going to be able to deal either with the psychological trauma of this, and I'm saying to you, carry this pregnancy. I'm going to encourage you. I will counsel you. I will help you. She chose to have the baby, and it was not easy. So I had a lot of time praying for her, counseling her, carrying her to counselors. Her father wanted to kick her out the house. Her mother said, if you kick her out the house, you're going to kick me out too. And so together, she had their baby girl. When she had her baby girl, the same father who was going to kick her out the house, who was an alcoholic, stopped drinking and stopped smoking because now he had a granddaughter. I called that girl about 8 years after, in 2008, because I wanted to know if she was sorry and she had regretted having this pregnancy. And she said to me, absolutely not, Dr. Simpson, she's the joy of my life. When her daughter was going to do GSAT, I got an email from her saying, I know you haven't heard from me and you think I've forgotten you, but I'll never forget you. And I just want to say thanks. This young lady now is about 16 or so. She's in a prominent high school doing extremely well in sixth form. And that mother had gotten married years after, and probably 3 or 4 years after the rape. And up to this point, she's never had another child. And that's the only child she's had. There was another patient that I came to know in her young adult life, but when she came to the clinic that I was working at years before, and she had been raped at 12 years old. And she came into the clinic But the nurse in the school was the one who identified the pregnancy, and her mother and her came to the clinic. She was 6 months pregnant. And at that time, both the doctors and her mother was not for abortion, but that would have been very dangerous for her life to have aborted. She carried her pregnancy and had her baby boy, who became the joy of that clinic and that family, and was the only person in that family to have passed common entrance and gone into high school. And that young lady went on with her life and had a relationship, had other children. There was a 14-year-old twin that I remember came into my office from a prominent high school. And when she also, and I want to make a note on this, she also arrived when we examined her. She was about 20 weeks pregnant. And when I told her the pregnancy test was positive and she's definitely pregnant, she started crying uncontrollably, as you can imagine. I hugged her up and I said, listen, this is not the end of your life. You can come through this. You can get over this. And eventually, with all that happened, she got support. She ended up going to Women's Center. She had her baby. They transferred her to another high school. She did her CXCs very well. And the last time I saw her, she was with her son, working, supporting, and really very happy. I had a 13-year-old, I remember, coming into my office, her father. Again, when she came in, she was 5 months pregnant. And when she came in, and I told her father and her that the pregnancy test was positive and that you're pregnant. Listen to me, the bawling so loud, you could hear her from outside the street from the clinic. She screamed, and he was screaming louder. And I was holding on my head thinking, my Lord, these people outside must wonder if I'm trying to kill this lady, this baby. Well, again, interventions, she got to Women's Center. And I saw her coming back with her mommy and her baby for immunization some months later, beaming from ear to ear, and her mother beaming from ear to ear with her lovely baby. And I remember the screaming in my office. Then there was a patient of mine, I would just say a mother, who came to me again. She had 2 boys, and she didn't want to be pregnant again a third time, and she had bought into the 2 is better than too many very well. She did not want to be pregnant another time, and she was thinking seriously about aborting this baby. So I encouraged her to keep the baby, and I would send her down. When she goes to the Jubilee, I would write a letter and ask him please to tie her tubes so that would be the only child, the third child. Just have the third child, and we'll just tie the tubes, we won't have any more. She agreed, and she went on. She didn't come back to the clinic because she said she didn't want anybody to know she was pregnant a third time. She ended up in Jubilee in labor with undiagnosed twins. And so she came, it was a very difficult labor. She came to tell me the story. It was a very difficult labor. Obviously, she reached down there with twins and nobody knew she was even having twins. She had a boy and a girl, and she came back to show me her boy and her girl, and the baby's father was now going to marry her because she now had a girl. And she now had a girl. She had 2 boys before, so now she had 3 boys, and this was a boy and girl twin, so now she had a girl. He was going to marry her because he always wanted a daughter. And I am now very distressed because this girl didn't want a third child, and she's here now with 4. So I'm like, listen, I'm going to go to church, see if I can get some baby clothes, some stuff for you to support you. She said, Doc, don't feel no way. My sister abroad is so excited over these twins. Them send so much things for me. I have more than the other 2 children. And I just noted it and smiled and said, Lord, you make a way. Then I had this patient. Now, this patient was raped, gang raped. And I didn't see her originally. She was seen by other persons who counseled her and encouraged her. Again, she did not know she was pregnant. She didn't know she was pregnant until quite on in the pregnancy. They counseled her to keep her baby and that they would help her to get this baby adopted. And she was brought to me so that I could find out how healthy she was and work with her in antenatal care and so. When she went down to Jubilee, she had a girl baby, and she originally had a boy before. She had a girl baby. So now when everybody's now working out to see how we can arrange to get her sort out herself for the adoption, she's like, Miss, my baby's the prettiest baby in the entire Jubilee. And the nurses said she's the most best behaved. And her mother came down, and her mother like, you can't give up this baby for adoption. And up to 3 or 4 years or so, when I last heard what was happening with her, she had an adorable little girl who she loved dearly, and she says is very bright and loved to praise the Lord. And she was a really happy camper. Now, I want to make a note here about the fact that the younger patients I saw, almost all of them came in pregnancies which were about 5 to 6 months pregnant, which is very typical because younger girls don't fully know what's happening. They miss their period, it doesn't really matter to them, and they're moving on. And then when they come in at this stage of pregnancy, and person feels that they need to help them out by aborting their babies, what you do is put them at a great risk for their own life, a great risk for them damaging themselves, a great risk for them psychologically being even more traumatized. It is a terrible thing. And then further on now, when they get over this, if their wombs are damaged and they can't have children anymore, later on in their lives, when they really want to move on with their lives, they're ever stuck at the fact that they were either raped or somebody pushed them to do this, and now it's a horror. It's just a horror. Of all the women that I saw, less than 5 of them went to have an abortion. And the few that I saw for those patients, they were always so sad and depressed. Of the others that had their babies, not one regretted having their baby, not one. I mean, they were happy, they carried gifts for me, they sent emails, they carried photos to show me their pretty babies, and none of them, not one of them came back and said, Dr. Simpson, you encouraged me to take this baby, I can't manage. Not one. Now, I want to specifically talk to you about the rape, okay, because I know that this is very dear to everybody's heart, but as I have noted already, some of the patients I've said already have been rape patients. But the whole thing of rape is horror for any woman who has to go through this. But I say there are, and I want to make sure that women need to be encouraged to go for medical attention as soon as they are raped. That's it. What is in process? It will stop them being pregnant. It will stop them from getting the infections like HIV that they need to start being treated for like same time. They also helps them with the whole counseling. It also helps them with the possibility of being able to get DNA testing to see if you can accurately decide who has caused this. So I wanted to make that out first off. But there's something very interesting that I saw in my reading and saw some research that was done that I found extremely interesting. And it's very strange because it goes along with what I have seen myself with persons that I know who have carried rape pregnancies. There was a psychiatrist who had studied women who kept their babies after rape and those who had done abortions. And this is what he said, and his name is Dr. Carr Benzio. He said, as a psychiatrist, I have treated a number of mothers who have aborted a child conceived through rape, as well as mothers who decided to carry the baby. Almost all of those who had abortions regretted their decision and had psychiatric problems because of that decision. Those who carried the baby, almost all would not reverse their decision and have a child they love and who loves them unconditionally. There was another
Dr.
researcher.
Simpson, we'd like to cite those.
I know.
Is that what you're asking too? Yes. If you could repeat those citations, that would be helpful.
Dr. Carr Benzio. He's a medical doctor.
Is it published anywhere?
Oh boy. If it is, I would have to.
Yes.
KARBENZIO.
If you're able to trace us a source of publication, you could let us know.
Right, I can.
Please go ahead.
Then there's a researcher, David Riordan, Julie Makima, and Amy Sobey, and I'll give you the names, and it's noted, completed a 9-year study on pregnancy outcomes of sexual victims. As a part of their research, the authors drew upon testimonies from 192 women who became pregnant as a result of rape or incest. They found that pregnancy resulting from sexual assault is actually a contraindication for abortion. A doctor treating a sexual assault victim should advise against abortion precisely because of the traumatic nature of the pregnancy. The testimonies and studies quoted in this book confirm that both the mother and child are helped by preserving life, not by perpetuating violence. Now, I want to share just 3 more people that I have known in my life. Now, these were persons that I remember in 2008 when I was speaking on abortion, there was a young lady, a mature lady, who stood up, and she was very, very serious about the fact that rape should not be a cause for us legalizing abortion. She was very strong with it. She was an inner-city young lady, mature lady. At the end of my sharing and everybody sharing, she came to me privately, and she said, "Doc, I was raped. I have about 4 or 5 children. I was raped. And I remember when I was being raped, I said to that man I was raping, God is going to judge you. He died before my daughter was born. And my daughter is the only one in my family who has gone to university and has looked after me and cares for me. And this is why I could never agree with it." I have another patient again, not a patient, a friend of mine, who shared with me she was also raped abroad. And she had her baby, a boy. Years later, she got married and she had another boy. And she said to me, "Dr. Simpson, that boy that I had from the rape is the boy in my life, the son that don't give me no trouble. The one from my husband and give me pure trouble." And a lot of times when people are out there talking about rape as a cause for abortion being legalized, I just feel sad because I know what it is like to have been raped and carry a baby. And I don't know how many people out there that are wanting the changes know what it's like. And yet we can't speak. I remember her saying that to me very clearly. Now, I'm going to just
Simpson, yes? Time is going on.
Yeah, man, I can finish now. Finish, Fred. These are my last few words, okay? So I would just really want to say, please, if we want to stop women dying from abortions, let us take the time to counsel them. Counsel these frightened mothers. Let them know all the complications of abortion and the development of their babies. Allocate more sources towards supporting our women in crisis pregnancies. Training our young people about their self-worth, pushing abstinence and marriage. Adoption is an option for women who are unable to cope with their babies. Sadly, this nation already has a serious problem with not valuing the sanctity of human life. May we always remember the words of our anthem, "Strengthen us, the weak, to cherish." I completed my 2008 presentation with this verse, and I do so again, Deuteronomy 30, verse 19. It says, "I call heaven and earth as witnesses today against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Choose life, that both you and your descendants may live." I'm finished.
Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate your appreciation, but it's very important that you observe the convention of silence, if you are in the gallery. Thank you very much, Dr. Simpson. Members, I have a question, but
Everybody has.
Member Stewart, you do too.
Thank you, Chairman. Dr. Simpson, very colorful, very passionate presentation, and I really commend you. You mentioned the fact that there were 45 medical doctors who signed the petition.
Yes.
And I take it that they are against legalizing abortion, huh?
Right.
Oh, I see. That's it.
Mrs. Scott-Flynn.
Thank you, Chairman. Dr. Simpson, nice to see you once again.
Mm-hmm.
Did you start that group?
Did I start the group?
I think you were supposed to have started some group to mentor some of these young girls, I believe.
That's what I do.
Okay.
Yes.
But we want to hear more about it, because I think your presentation, you mentioned some really good options for young girls to, as far as mentoring and you know, talking to them about abortion and what it can do to them late in their pregnancy, especially that's what you're speaking about, late abortion. You mentioned several times about having an abortion, and a lot of these young girls don't normally find out that they're pregnant until they're probably 5 or 6 months that they're coming to your office, which I myself, I'm not in agreement with. Having an abortion that late in your pregnancy. So I can agree, I guess we can agree with that. But as a medical practitioner, just to follow up on members, he mentioned 45 doctors. I have to say that I've spoken to quite a number of doctors who believe in choice. So while you may have doctors who believe in pro-life, you also have doctors who believe in the woman having a choice to choose. Do you believe in the morning after pill as a medical doctor? And do you think that the morning after pill should possibly be in our health centers for young women who, so that it can be administered properly? That if a young girl gets raped, or if they have an unprotected sex and they feel that they may be in that time of the month where it's a danger time for them to possibly be pregnant, do you believe in the morning after pill being administered through a health center or not?
Right, no.
So you're not in agreement with that at all. So even the next day, if I end up having sexual intercourse or if I'm raped, you don't think that if I'm raped and I feel like, oh my gosh, let me go back and check? Because most women, we do know when our periods are going to come. We do know. I used to have a calendar, maybe because I ran track, but I had a calendar because I had to know because of competition. And so if it is that I was in that position that if I'm raped, it would be good to know that here in Jamaica, I could possibly go to a health center and possibly get that morning after pill to prevent pregnancy, and you're not for that.
You know, the morning after pill works in different ways, okay? And it can be preventative in terms of like a contraceptive, like a contraceptive pill, right? No, right. I'm just,
Because it's the next day.
I know, right. And also, it has its own side effects, okay? It's not side effect free. Some people think it is, it's not.
And what are the side effects?
There are women who have taken the morning after pill and they have not seen a period again.
And they have not seen their period ever again?
Right. So there are...
where can we find that information?
No. I just know a patient that has happened to.
You know of one patient that has happened to. So that is not, saying, because I've never heard of that.
Right, I know, but I've seen a patient who has not seen her period again, having had the morning after pill. So what I'm saying is,
and I think we need to have it. I think I would love for if any physician out there or anybody, scientist would possibly follow up on this to let me find out if this is true. I didn't know that was so.
Right. So to have it free in medical centers, just handing out to girls, I don't know if I'd be comfortable with that.
Pardon me?
To just have it free in medical centers for women to just come and take it and swallow it.
No. To just come and take it. No, it'd be administered. You come in, I was raped or had a sexual intercourse, and I think that I may end up pregnant, which as you as a medical doctor, you also know that sometimes it takes a good few hours, at least maybe 7 hours sometimes, to actually for the egg and the sperm to meet, right? Correct? Going through the fallopian tube. So I'm sure that would also stop that. So it would prevent pregnancy. Nothing would have happened. There would be no connection between the egg or the sperm connecting, and you are against that.
So what I'm saying is,
you're against.
Who has been
you
raped,
are against that happening, that process taking place.
I never said that. Did I say that? I didn't say that.
Let's hear it.
I said for a person who has been raped, I really would allow for the giving of the morning after pill if they come in immediately. But for someone to just have it there in the health center, for women to come in and use it for every reason, I think it has its risks, and we need to think about it.
Could I follow up, please, on that point?
Yes.
You say that the morning after pill in non-rape situations has its after effects or has its problems. Okay.
No, I think that would be for every woman may never see a period again.
May I?
I'm not saying every woman may never.
Please.
I'm saying there are some women who that might occur for. But I think in this instance of a rape, when persons come immediately in, I would be okay for the burning of the
What I'd like to know is if your reservations are on medical grounds or on ethical grounds.
On medical grounds.
Medical grounds. Okay. Well, that's important. Do you have more? Yes.
I would love to follow up with that to tell me the medical grounds, because you are only aware of one person ever never seen her period. Was she old like me? Well, I'm still having one, and I'm 55.
No, she was not.
So she was not in menopause.
Person. No, absolutely not. She was a young adult.
Okay. You mentioned suicide. Do you know what the suicide rate is for women in Jamaica who have sought abortion? What is the suicide rate for these women killing themselves or going crazy or pretty sad about what they've done?
All right. Now, Jamaica, I can just tell you that there's been no studies done on abortion and suicide in Jamaica. I have asked more than once for persons who work with suicide, like Choose Life International, if they could give me an idea, and they just have not studied it. So I can't speak on Jamaica. I can say, please, let me do two things. I can say that I have seen patients who have been referred to me who have wanted to commit suicide and they had abortions. I've seen those people. But I wanted to tell you, boy, can I just find it in here, that I did look up the statistics that have been done in patients in countries where abortion is legal, okay? And I just wanted to note it because I found it very alarming, so I hope I can find it. Yes. The largest ever study done in 2011, and I just have the references, it's right down at the bottom, the references in my presentation, concluded that abortions increase the risk of mental health problems by 81%, anxiety disorders by 34%, depression by 37%, alcohol abuse by 110%, suicide behaviors by 155%. A Finland study noted that post-abortive women were at a 650% higher risk of suicide. And it's all there. I mean, I could read it out for you where they got it from. No, the one about the suicide?
But no, with everything that you just read,
it came
you
from
mentioned some percentages. Where did that? Where is that study?
Each of them came from a different study, but all of the references are there. You can look at it because this is.
It's part of what you
this
have.
Is my presentation. That's here.
The submission. Yeah. Do you believe that there are women who actually choose to have an abortion who are okay?
Of course, because as I say, it's a percentage, you know. So if I have an 81%, then there is a 20% who haven't, you know. It's just that the ones who are not okay, sometimes they are not in a majority.
Okay. My last question. I think in the first part of your presentation, you mentioned about, I think it would possibly be related to the saving of a woman's life.
Right.
Do you, as a medical physician, you know way more than any of us in here, unless you're doctors, are you saying to us that if a mother who is pregnant, and I know of a 19-year-old who was pregnant and had a particular illness, and that 19-year-old required surgery, and the doctor pretty much told the 19-year-old that the surgery was needed, and if the person didn't have the surgery, the person possibly would have died or other things would have happened to this individual. And this person was supposed to have a particular surgery, and the doctor said, you can't have this surgery unless we just found out that you're pregnant. And say the woman was 6 weeks pregnant. The doctor had to pretty much perform the surgery or to abort the child, the fetus, to save that mother's life. Are you saying that the doctor could have taken the fetus at 6 weeks, and that 6-week fetus would have lived?
Okay. I wish I knew the circumstance that you're speaking about in detail.
Can a 6-week
baby cannot live?
Can a 6-week or 8-week-old fetus, like I think you showed us here?
That's 11. Cannot.
11. Okay. Mm-hmm. Can a 6-week-old fetus, maybe like here?
No.
Can this fetus survive?
Not at this
without
time.
the mother, without being still implanted in the mother from the umbilical cord, getting nutrients, etc.? Can that fetus survive without the mother? So if the doctor performed a procedure on the woman, which is an abortion, is it to save the child and the mother, or is it to save the mother because the doctor knows that the child, the fetus, is going to die because it cannot live outside of the mother at that stage?
Okay. Now, as I said, I wish I knew more.
I don't think you need to know more as a doctor.
I do.
Can a 6-week-old fetus survive without
I don't know of
You don't
any,
know?
Let me explain. I don't know of any medical reason why a 6-week-old would be a danger to a mother's life. That's why I was saying. So most of the pregnancies that are dangerous to mothers' lives are in the second trimester and onward. And so we're looking at 20 weeks and more. And a 20-weeker
the mother needed a particular surgery that would save the mother's life, but the surgery could not happen to the mother unless they perform this
All right, let me explain.
This abortion.
The surgery. If the mother needed a surgery, the surgery could have been done, and she keeps the pregnancy. That's why I was saying I know of someone who was.
But there are other cases.
Yeah.
Are you saying that all cases the mother would survive?
Could I interpose?
Yeah.
What's an ectopic pregnancy, doctor?
An ectopic pregnancy is when a pregnancy, usually in the fallopian tube, okay, but it can be other places. It's outside of the womb.
Yeah.
Okay.
In that case, my understanding is, and I understood that from, I wanted to ask you regarding the statement that you brought from your fellow practitioners. Once the mother's life is at stake, in relation to the carrying of that child, then my understanding of the present medical ethic, the moral issues for others to say, is that they would deliver they would perform the operation, deliver the child, try to keep the child alive, and try to keep the mother alive.
Right, but an ectopic pregnancy.
But the question, and 1 minute, the issue relates to the word in the law that I think Reverend Mr. Saunders raised, intentionality. If your intention is to save the mother's life, and the child cannot be saved, that is a different thing to when, legally, I'm not expressing a view now, I'm referring to my knowledge of the case law, that's a different thing from when there is no such requirement to save the mother's life.
Okay, can I just explain what an ectopic pregnancy is? Because an ectopic pregnancy is in a fallopian tube. It cannot live anyway. Okay, at ectopic pregnancy, that baby is not going to be able to live. So it's not considered an abortion. You will have to remove the tube and the baby and leave the mother. But it's not an abortion.
It is a principle that I'm anxious to have clarified. And I thought that the statement in the rescript you brought made that clear and would have helped Mrs. Cuthbert's question to be answered, where if the mother's life is at risk and it involves removing the child, then the saving of the mother's life is sufficient reason to remove the child.
But what we are saying, though, is to deliver the baby, not to kill the baby and take out the baby, deliver the baby and give the baby a chance to live.
I see. That's very helpful.
Yeah, because most of the situations, or almost all, are older. Persons can have surgery. I had a patient who had appendicitis, and she was pregnant. She did the surgery, had her appendix removed, her baby was still intact, and she went on, you see? So that's what I was trying to explain. I even had somebody else who knew of somebody else, a gynecologist, who she was actually, the pregnancy was like weeks. She just missed the period, and she did a fibroid surgery, removing the fibroids while inside the womb was that developing baby. And the pregnancy went on. The baby wasn't lost or troubled. So that's why I was asking about.
I'm not a medical doctor, but I know of many situations. And so I think not all situations will be the same. That is a cyst on an ovary, or fibroid. There are other medical situations where a woman would possibly have to do a procedure that would be a danger to her, and the baby would have to be taken. You call it abortion, call it trying to save, but it would be an abortive procedure that would be done. And I think as a medical physician, I think you would possibly know that is so. Those are my questions, though. And I guess, I want to find out about the pill. I cannot pronounce that. Start with an M.
It's the same thing as cytotec.
Is the same. Is it? Are you also against that being prescribed?
Could we clear that for the stenowriters? What's the name of that pill? And
it's misoprostol.
Misoprostol.
Right. And it's also called cytotec. There's another name, cytotec. No, I'm terribly against that drug. It is also a very dangerous drug. It can cause excess bleeding, and it definitely is given when women are 6 weeks and so on onwards, and some people give it even later. It is a dangerous drug.
Are you aware that is in the market on the market here in Jamaica?
I do.
What are you doing about that as a medical physician? Where's your voice?
I really just try to save my patients and their babies when they come to me.
No, but you're here at this very important anti-abortion, this law being changed, or to make it a civil law, or to protect our women, protect our girls. And you're saying there are women who are actually taking this pill, buying it downtown, buying it wherever, uptown, buying it all across Jamaica, injuring themselves, dying, some of them, right? And ended up at Jubilee. And you, as a medical physician with your other 45 members who signed this declaration to say that they are against abortion or against this law, you know that there are people injuring themselves, little girls, young girls injuring themselves, young women injuring themselves, and ended up at Jubilee. And you have done absolutely nothing. Your voice is not loud enough.
Respectfully, member, well, there are two things I want to say, please.
I'm sorry. I am very passionate.
Yes,
I'm very passionate about this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Chairman, but
I don't think we want to ascribe personal motive or here. And I'm hoping that you let that rest. And I'm going to speak to the gallery. I understand how strong people's views are. I understand how controversial it is. But if I hear intervention, I'm going to clear the gallery. We have an exquisitely difficult task here. We are all of good faith trying to find what is best for the people of Jamaica. And the respect that is required from us and to us is not going to be compromised. Thank you very much. Dr. Simpson, thank you very much for your presentation. It's 3:45. The next presentation is from Ms. Mosley of the Christian Legal Center. I'm beginning to apprehend a problem, members, in terms of the next two, the timing, but let's try and see if we can complete them within the specified time. Ms. Mosley, thank you very much. You may proceed. Please.
Great, thank you.
Better now.
Thank you for the invitation to speak. I shall be speaking from a memorandum that's been given by one of our legal team, and also really it's a very general presentation, not a very long one hopefully, to try and draw people's attention to some of the general social effects we believe we can see in Britain after over 50 years of legal abortion. And it's that, rather than trying to give an opinion on the precise legal decision-making, which is for people in Jamaica, not for us. I'm actually from the policy department, but obviously familiar with the basic issues. We've been involved in pro-life advocacy for many years in the United Kingdom. The first thing to say about the Abortion Act was passed as long ago as 1967 in Britain. It created exceptions in law allowing for abortion in certain circumstances, but now nearly 9 million unborn children have lost their lives. Just over 50 years later, most pretenses for safeguarding against unlawful abortions have been abandoned. The practice of pre-signing consent forms without even seeing the expectant mother has become commonplace. And the United Kingdom is a little different to some other EU countries. The Parliamentary Assembly, the Council of Europe, and the United States have all taken steps in recent years to decrease the number of abortions and to protect medical staff's conscience if they do not wish to perform abortions. There are three basic areas in this memorandum. An emergent consensus is developing which recognises life as commencing at conception. We've heard a lot about that already. No competing right to abortion have ever been recognised in international law. And intergovernmental institutions, thirdly, have become increasingly aggressive and assertive in undermining state sovereignty of the issue of protection of life. I shall be skipping anything to do with European laws. We're not in Europe, but just referring more to other documents. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 3, everyone has the right to life. So the question there, obviously, everyone from conception. The International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 6, every human being has the inherent right to life. This right shall be protected by law. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his life. Of course, that includes her life as well. The International Covenant, then, again, Article 6.5, sentence of death shall not be imposed for crimes committed by people below 18 years of age and shall not be carried out on pregnant women. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, Article 6, every child has the inherent right to life. State parties shall ensure the survival and development of the child. I think that's rather clear. If I move on. Personhood, that's been spoken about, and we refer to the San Jose Articles. Each human life is a continuum that begins at conception and advances in stages until death. Science gives different names to these stages and lists them. This does not change the scientific consensus that at all points of development, each individual is a living member of the human species. Okay. Now, to the point that no competing right to abortion in international law. Advocates of abortion, we believe, have created a narrative, a false one, that the termination of pregnancy is a right. But this is not internationally true. No United Nations or European treaty, for that matter, mentions abortion explicitly or by implication. So we go on to efforts to create an international right to abortion failed at the 1994 International Conference on Population Development in Cairo, the Fourth World Conference of Women that took place the following year in Beijing. And the Cairo document states governments should take appropriate steps to help women avoid abortion, which in no case should be promoted as a method of family planning. Clearly an attempt to bridge divides and go forward together. Piero Tozzi, referencing Marianne Glendon from the US, has analysed correctly, in our view, rather than treating abortion as a right, they should be cherished and protected like freedom of speech or freedom of religion. The Cairo Outcome document says that governments should seek to reduce the recourse to abortion, eliminate the need for abortion, and strive to help women avoid repeat abortion. Presumably, if abortion were a right similar to freedom of speech, the drafters would not have called on governments to reduce and eliminate it. Okay. The Beijing document, concluding document, echoes the language used in the Cairo Programme of Action and reaffirms the sovereign right of states to legislate on protections it wishes to provide the unborn child. The United Nations Charter states that nothing contained in the present charter shall authorize the United Nations to intervene in matters which are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of any state, or shall require the members to submit such matters to settlement under the present charter. So there's no overwhelming consensus, really. And we come to national sovereignty and the principle of subsidiarity, and again, restricted to material from the United Nations. Intergovernmental bodies, including most notoriously the UN, have tried to create a right to abortion by stealth. This agenda-based approach directly injures national sovereignty, okay, and can do violence to genuine dialogue on human rights. So, for example, UN compliance committees exceeding their remit by trying to bully nations into liberalizing their abortion laws abounds. Just an example, the Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, charged with implementing the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, has taken Chile to task for constitutionally protecting life from conception. In 2004, the committee was so bold as to call for the decriminalization of abortion in Chile. Okay, and then the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women also called for it. The Human Rights Committee then, they're all piling on, in 2007, labeled Chile's abortion laws as unduly restrictive. And there are other examples from Europe and elsewhere. Okay. So unfortunately, some UN agencies and treaty monitoring bodies, which have a lot of influence, and of course parliamentarians in close contact with them in different countries, have been trying to undermine the treaty process and the plain meaning of right to life by redefining treaty language and obligations to include abortion. So that's what I have to say about that. I'd like to draw your attention, I want to talk about the UK and really sort of illustrate, and some of them will be illustrations and some of them will be questions to which actually I don't have answers, but I think it would be good to encourage people in Jamaica to reflect upon them. We've had 9 million abortions. Some of the consequences of abortion as a right and as a common practice has become more common, can't truly be measured. So, for example, there are often heated debates about the link with domestic violence on both sides. But the truth is that our government doesn't count how many abortions may be due to a woman being pushed into abortion due to a violent partner. Individual cases come up in the press internationally. This is a problem of data and of how deeply do we want to understand the patterns. It might be a hidden problem. The even more difficult, more fundamental, the issue of the quality of care given to unborn children and newly born children and pregnant women in the healthcare system, and also to the vulnerable, especially the disabled, in across the life cycle in our healthcare and care systems. You can't really measure that with statistics. But, you know, future historians might be looking at different countries and trying to work out, you know, what has been happening. I mean, one hears people complaining. Abortion in relation to relationship and marital breakdown, again, not measured. There used to be, in the first, I think it was the first 5 years, I don't have the document in front of me, where more detailed questions were asked in the official data. About why abortion is happening. Was it due to relationship, adultery, alcohol, and so on? Obviously, that became considered socially acceptable by many in government. But it is a factor, again, that's not being discussed. And so we've got to think about the decline in the quality of moral reasoning once you have widespread assumption of abortion. The impact on women's mental health has also been discussed. We, on our website, have numerous articles about the consequences of abortion and how it can be considered harmful. So we refer in one article to the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children in Britain, which is the oldest pro-life advocacy group in Britain, and a report that they published in 2017, Abortion and Women's Health. And they have a lot of information they've looked at on that. Suicide risk, mortality rate for suicide after abortion, looking at different countries such as Denmark, 80% increase of risk of death compared to after abortion compared to after birth within the first year between 1980 and 2004. Potential link, but it is highly debated, to risk of breast cancer. Of course, that's an ongoing debate. Higher rate of psychiatric admission. These are all things that, you know, there should be careful attention paid to, we believe, by those in Jamaica who are deeply interested internationally. into this evidence. Another thing to mention is, and this is more recent in Britain, the effect on care of premature babies and attitudes toward them. So a former colleague had written about this in 2017 in Britain. New figures showing that 1 in 3 babies born before 23 weeks survive to their first birthday, and discusses this. And I won't say anything more personally about what I'm aware of. I don't want it to be personal. Noting that the restrictions to 12 weeks of abortion to 12 weeks is commonplace in other European countries. And in Britain, in fact, most people want a more restrictive law with regard to time. I'm aware, of course, that public opinion is very conservative in Jamaica compared to Britain. And as a result, people might want to look at Britain, where there's been this regime of legal abortion, and of it being, especially in some sectors of the press, considered acceptable. In order to understand what it's done to society, there seems to be a gulf between many ordinary people and the way that lawmakers, politicians, perceive this issue, and which is important in terms of public trust and relationships and the immeasurable damage that I've mentioned already. There also sex-selective abortion I'd like to mention. We had, my colleagues had a client, a young woman who's pro-life, had begun criminal proceedings against 2 doctors who were filmed undercover offering sex-selective or gender-selective abortion. That was in 2012 that filming that was done. A police investigation followed, and the Crown Prosecution Service considered prosecution. However, it then concluded that whilst there was sufficient evidence to provide a realistic prospect of prosecution, it would not be in the public interest. And following that decision, the client launched a very rare and unusual private prosecution of the 2 doctors. But the Crown Prosecution Service intervened, took over the cases and dropped them. And she had a massive legal bill to pay to the doctors. And then some costs were awarded against her, and she challenged the cost order and the Crown Prosecution Service's decision to intervene in the prosecution. Eventually, a settlement was reached, and she still had a legal bill, but supporters were able to help her. So this was, was very prominently in the press, all because of wanting to fight sex-selective abortion. Again, the vast majority of people in Britain, over 80%, disagree with sex-selective abortion. This includes people who are very much pro-choice. So, this comes down the line many years after we've had the Act. But there is some good news as well. My colleague who's written this memorandum gave evidence this year, in fact, in our Parliament on human rights and the abortion law in Northern Ireland. And Northern Ireland is relevant, and there was a campaign called Both Lives Matter that highlighted the point in its publicity that over 100,000 lives have been saved in their estimation in Northern Ireland because abortion was not permitted. So Northern Ireland, it's not really permitted, but there's been a bit of a political controversy about Northern Ireland. Again, I was mentioning the international debate really in the use of international agreements to try and push abortion rights. And the same has been happening in Northern Ireland. MPs in Westminster trying to push it. So that's what I want to say about by way of illustration. With regard to Britain, I would encourage those who are interested to look at our website and look at the material that's produced, often, also drawing on what other pro-life organizations, people that do full-time pro-life work do. Don't be fooled by the fact that because we can't always measure some of the most intimate, if you like, effects of abortion being available and considered acceptable, that this is somehow unimportant and could be shoved under the carpet. Because we're talking about human dignity here and the quality of life and well-being as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mosley. It's useful to have some comparative data in your presentation. Any comments? Can we thank Ms. Mosley then for her presentation and move on to that of the Jamaica Coalition for a Healthy Society. Dr. West, are you presenting?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. No, I don't have a minute. I'm sorry, I was distracted for a minute. I'm being asked that you can tell me again, before you start, or we just have to make some change arrangements upstairs. What are you saying, Doctor?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Let me go close up. We have a short video. It's 11 minutes. If you wish, I can start my presentation and we show the video after, according to, if it's not ready yet.
We're anxious to contain your presentation as much as possible, giving you full liberty to get your ideas across. What is preferable, the video or the?
We would love to show the video first, and then I speak for 5 minutes, no more than that, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, very well.
Yes.
Good. And then there'll be
it's
questions.
ready. Okay, good. So,
one moment, Doctor. You turn on yours too, Dr. West, if you please. No, it's only on if you see the red. No, try and draw closer to the second one then and proceed. Or if you care to move, beside Mrs. Saunders.
Can you? that's the end of the video, and may I start my presentation in the interest of time?
Yes, please, Dr. West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If we're going to be having a discussion, we need to clarify definitions so that we are all speaking the same language. And I just want to, in response to some of the questions that were asked, I want to clarify some definitions and to state what my assumptions are. So, first of all, you, Mr. Chairman, asked the question about Jamaica in the context of a secular society. It is my understanding that Jamaica is not a secular society. A secular society is one in which there is no input from religious considerations at all. And I have no evidence, or I'm not aware of any instruments that declare Jamaica to be a secular society. So if you do have such instruments, some legal instruments or something in the Constitution that says so, I would like to be aware of it, because my assumption is that Jamaica is not a secular society. Also, Jamaica is not a theocracy. A theocracy is a state that is run by priests on behalf of God. And Jamaica is not a theocracy. My understanding of Jamaica, my assumption as to this debate, is that Jamaica is a plural society, one in which all ideas contend. And because of its historical antecedents, Jamaica forms its laws and public policies within the Judeo-Christian worldview. The other consideration is, you asked the question about law and morality. My understanding is that every law, every single law is formed and considered some morality, whether that morality is transcendent as the Judeo-Christian morality or whether it is a shared societal morality. But every law reflects a morality. So the question of not bringing your moral values to a law is well, it's something that doesn't really make sense, because law reflects morality. Again, this is my understanding. I just want to clarify this morning after pill. The member, Ms. Cuthbert Flynn, asked about the morning after pill. That's an umbrella term. There are different types of morning after pill. There is a type of morning after pill that prevents ovulation. It prevents the egg from being released. That does not cause an abortion. And so someone like myself would be quite fine with that morning after pill. There are other types of morning after pill. So we need to be specific when we ask questions, because they don't always, they can lead to confusing answers. The other thing about it is definitions. My understanding is what we are discussing here is induced abortion. And by that, I understand it to mean it refers to the acts of deliberately killing an unborn child in the womb of the mother and discarding the extracted body of the child with other waste products. In the context of that definition, the treatment of an ectopic pregnancy is not an abortion. It is not so described in medical language. It is not an abortion. What we are considering is a situation in which someone, whether a medical practitioner, into the womb of the woman, that's where the child has to be, in the womb of the woman, and kills that child for whatever reason, and so on. And medically, that is never, ever indicated. Nobody ever does that. That is a wholly social construct. Now, my contribution today is a worldview contribution. You know, your worldview is the value system you have, the lens through which you look at the world and the lens through which you respond to the world. And we all have one. We all come to every single decision in our life with the perspective of a worldview. And competing in these discussions, although it's not really stated, but what I would like to bring to the Parliament today is the fact that what we have is a competing interest between the Judeo-Christian pro-life position and the third wave feminist ideology. I choose to mention third wave feminist ideology because I heard Representative Cuthbert Flynn on TBC radio introducing this discussion to the Parliament, and she asked that the APRAG recommendations be followed. I heard that with my own 2 ears, or at least that they be brought back for consideration. So this is why I am here to present these two contrasting approaches to abortion. The Judeo-Christian worldview in terms of abortion is quite simple. All human beings are made in the image of God, and because of that, all human life is valuable. No innocent human life must be killed. And also, the onus is on society to organize itself so that every human being, from conception to natural death, has the best life possible. Simple. The third wave feminist ideology on abortion is radically different. And the document I submitted to the Parliament speaks to that view of abortion. The document I submitted is called the Johannesburg Initiative, advocating for abortion access. And the feminist worldview on abortion is this, and you would read it in that document. At the present moment, the right to choose and access abortion is an absolute prerequisite for women to be able to exercise their human rights. Without abortion access, women cannot exercise their freedom and cannot live as full citizens. For this reason, the struggle for abortion rights sits at the heart of the women's rights and health movement. So
Dr.
we
West,
have.
is that your composition, or is
it's
it?
in the document that I submitted.
No,
the
thank you very much.
Johannesburg Initiative.
No, please. I'm just asking something. Are you quoting someone else? Is there some reference, or is that your composition?
I am quoting the document, the Johannesburg Initiative, advocating for abortion access, which I submitted to this house, and I assume that you have.
Okay, so this is a scholarly worldview or aspect of a worldview that you're quoting.
It is the ideological position of the women's health and right movement. Okay, one of the persons who was involved in creating this document was Dr. Fred Nunes from Guyana. He was 18 countries were represented in that document. Dr. Fred Nunes from Guyana was one of the representatives. He was the consultant to the APRAG. It is clear from this ideological position that the value, if any, of an unborn child is not a consideration for the third wave feminist view on abortion. What this document and what this ideological position is stated is that a powerful woman has the right to determine the value of an unborn child and whether that child should live. This is similar to what obtained in ancient pagan Rome, where the father had the right to kill his children if he so desired. And I suppose the third wave feminists are seeking to recreate that kind of approach to life, except to put it in the hands of the mother. So because of that perspective on abortion, that document and the third wave feminist movement have developed a concept of abortion access in relation to a number of considerations. One, law. In relation to law, abortion should be decriminalized. In relation to health services, all restrictions such as the basis of the age of the mother or the requirements for parental or spousal consent should be removed. The requirement for multiple doctor approval before an abortion can be conducted should be removed. All of this is in that document. The gestation period, which is the age of the pregnancy, should not be a deterrent. This is why we see in Virginia, in New York, they are asking for abortion whilst delivery is taking place, because in this philosophical context, the age of the pregnancy is not a deterrent. Likewise, bans on medically appropriate procedures should be removed, and so should mandatory counseling and all religious and socio-culturally based restriction. That is in the document.
Yes,
Dr. Fred Nunes is part of the author of that document.
Yeah.
Can you explain the New York, what you just mentioned? Can you expound on that as to how it's set up and the legal aspect of it? Can you go ahead and explain to the people more on what you're talking about, the law that was just passed in New York?
Mr. Chairman, the rest of my presentation is very short, and I have a very short time here. Could I be allowed to complete it and then address the members' question?
Of course you may, but I think it's important that you address the intent and direction of the motion that is before. And you haven't been privy to all of the previous discussions, but it has been stated quite clearly that the reform sought, whether it is approved or not, does not extend to anything related to late-term or partial birth abortions. So in as much as you are expositing on that, that does not speak to the particular intent of the motion. Am I correct, Mrs. Cuthbert-Flynn? Yeah, thank you.
The problem I have with that, Mr. Chairman, is that I heard the member on TBC radio her whole presentation in Parliament, and she asks that the APRAG documents, what the APRAG recommendation, be brought back to the consideration. And this is what I am dealing with. Now, you are saying one thing, but what I heard her saying is quite different. Which one do I follow?
In the interest of time, please proceed.
Thank you very much.
We will refine.
So they developed the concept of full access. As I said, there should be bans on medically appropriate procedures should be removed, and so should mandatory counseling and all religious and socio-culturally based restriction. They even said that research institutions should develop procedures that the woman herself can control. This is the commitment to abortion in the third wave feminist ideology. So when we look at the APRAG document, which I heard the member, Ms. Julia Cuthbert, ask that it be brought back to the House, when we compare what the Johannesburg Initiative said to what the APRAG recommendations are, the APRAG recommendations define no illegal abortion whatsoever. One. And that is consistent with the decriminalization in the Johannesburg Initiative. Two, the APRAG recommendations suggested that the abortion on request up to 22 weeks. After 22 weeks, it's not recommended, but it's permitted for unspecified special circumstances, actual or foreseeable socioeconomic circumstances. Actual or foreseeable is any imaginary thing. That is what it's actually saying. And that is consistent with the Johannesburg Initiative. Not only that, the APRAG recommendations, which I heard Ms. Juliet Flynn with my own two heirs request be brought back to this House, recommended that medical personnel be subject to $250,000 fines or 3 months imprisonment for every instant they refuse to refer someone to another person who does an abortion. This is part of determining.
Can you? I don't remember or recall ever saying that.
No, you didn't say it, but it's in the APRAG recommendation. You said, you asked that the APRAG...
I did not insinuate that.
You asked...
And I think you need to retract that.
I will not retract it. You asked that the APRAG recommendations be brought back, and I'm telling you what the APRAG recommendations were.
Can I pause
I will not retract it.
Please, please. We have been able to carry through this process so far in an ironic way. And I think it is important that you complete your presentation, but equally important that if a position is being ascribed to the member, which she does not hold, that we do not proceed along that line. So please continue, Dr. West.
I will not retract. I heard her say it by own two heirs.
Dr. West, please continue.
Okay, I will continue. Mr. Chairman, I presented two approaches to abortion, the consideration of abortion. We, on both sides of the issue, recognize that there are such things as unwanted pregnancies, unplanned pregnancies, and crisis pregnancies. The question is, what do you do in this situation? We in the Jamaica Coalition for a Healthy Society are recommended that the society approach this very real problem from the perspective that all life is valuable, from conception to natural death, and that social laws and policies reflect every effort to achieve that. The other side of the debate, the third wave feminists who sought Dr. Fred Nunes as consultant, came up with a document that suggested that we should allow mothers who are powerful to kill their unborn children as they see fit without consultation for anyone. The question is, which of these two ways does the Jamaican society wish to proceed on? And I would recommend that we stay with the Judeo-Christian pro-life position of the best life for everybody from conception to natural death. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much for a spirited presentation, Dr. West. And thank you also for the video, which I don't think many of us have had the opportunity to see something as graphic. May I ask a question first? Dr. West, please clarify for me. Every law you say reflects morality. Whose morality and decided by whom?
it reflects a morality. As I said, it could be the morality of the Judeo-Christian worldview, which comes out of the Bible, or it may reflect an atheist secular worldview, which comes from atheists and secular people. But the law is going to reflect somebody's morality.
Yes, and when you are living in a society which has various stimuli of morality, various canons, is it permissible for law to reflect but one aspect to prefer one aspect of a moral definition?
This is where I said Jamaica is a plural democracy. This is where discussion comes in. And discussion would not be based simply, I believe this and you believe that, but we go and we look at the outcomes. What are the outcomes of the various recommendations that come out of these worldviews? And that is what should determine which one we follow.
Which is I think, a very reasonable position. What that means is that we look at the different, as we're doing, the different presentations with an emphasis on their outcomes, not by any means ignoring their foundations, their presuppositions, but we look at the various outcomes and determine what is best in a broad humanistic context to go forward. Would you agree with that? This committee is anxious to understand what we're doing.
Yeah, I'm saying that we come with a fulsome discussion. We look at the outcomes of each of the recommendations. Right. Do we want to have a final solution like the Germans had with the Jews, or do we wish to have a different sort of thing? Yes. These are the hard facts that we are facing, sir.
Dr. West, in your second life, you must become a QC. It is precisely this that I'm anxious for direction, for help on.
Yeah.
Yes, because what is not going to be helpful is if we start from opposing premises, either the Judeo-Christian worldview, which I share, yes, and what you call the third wave feminist movement, and there is no allision, there is no convergence. Yes,
there is none.
Well, if
the issue of abortion, we have convergence on other issues, like for example, sexual abuse of children. We converge nicely there. There is none on the issue of abortion. That's a truth.
Very well. You have stated your position clearly. Yeah. The purpose of this committee is to hear people from varying points of view, and we will then have to make up our mind what we report to the Parliament of the nation and recommend for law.
Yeah.
I really would like to say to you that at the end of the day, if everyone comes with their diametrical views, and there is no accommodation, well, I'm not sure how much progress we will make. However, you've stated your position with pellucid clarity. I didn't get the help I needed. Mrs. Cotwell-Flynn, Mr. Stewart, any questions?
I'm reading. Yes, Chairman, I'm looking at Dr. West's pronouncements here, and I have seen where one of his item here speaks to the fact that it is abortion, I suppose, is not primarily a medical issue. It is a social, ideological, and political issue which seeks to corrupt the practice of medicine. That is very, very strong. You want to say something more about it? Despite any pronouncement?
It is absolutely true. It may be strong, but it's absolutely true. And there's no need to be politically correct when you can be right. Abortion, as I said, we must agree on definitions, is the deliberate killing of a child in the womb. Okay? And the reason for that is, well, whatever. There is no medical indication for a doctor to go into a woman's womb and kill a child. There is none whatsoever. And that's a fact. Feminists, the third wave feminists, want to be able, because in their ideology, unless a woman can have an abortion, she's not free. For them, freedom is being able to have an abortion, as they used to say, on demand and without apology. And in order to do that, since they can't do the abortion themselves, they have to hijack and corrupt the medical profession in order to achieve it.
12? Anything?
I don't know.
Thank you. Well, don't feel constrained.
No, I think I want to just ask two questions. Do you believe that every pro-choice person is a feminist?
No, but I know that the people who are pushing the legal and political thing are third-wave feminists.
Are third-wave feminists?
Yeah, absolutely. Not first wave. The first wave feminists were good. Third-wave feminists. Yeah. I stand with that. I stand on that.
And you showed us a very graphic video. How does a doctor remove a fetus when they're trying to save a mother's life, different from what we just saw?
Depending on the stage of the pregnancy, the doctor could induce labor by giving the person certain drugs like oxytocin. In the case of what you spoke of as an ectopic pregnancy.
No, I'm not speaking about ectopic. Ectopic is when the baby is lodged in the tube and it's a tubal pregnancy.
That's right.
And pretty much the baby is not going to live.
Yeah.
The baby dies. A lot of women have that worldwide. And the doctor will have to perform or the mother can die.
Yeah.
I'm asking the question, you have mentioned before that when a doctor removes the child or fetus to save the mother, it is not considered abortion.
No.
What is it then, and what is the procedure? That's all I'm asking.
Yeah, the doctor
How does the procedure is different from what we saw on the video?
What we saw is somebody ripping a child apart. The doctor who delivers a mother who, let's say someone has preeclampsia, which is a condition of hypertension and proteinuria, which if you leave it, the person goes on to get seizures, and that has a high risk of mortality. That the doctor may want to say, I need to deliver this child, to terminate the pregnancy. The way the doctor does that, he gives the mother an oxytocin drip in her arm. The uterus then responds in a physiological manner. The child is delivered and put in an incubator. Nobody rips the child apart.
Is that the child, then the cervix then dilates?
The
is that what you're saying?
dilates.
And then they go in a different way.
They don't
is
go
that what
in.
You're saying?
They do not go
they
in.
Don't go in.
The child is delivered through the usual uterine contractions.
How is the child delivered? The mother pushes?
The
mother pushes and delivers the child. And the child is delivered and then...
And the neonatologists are there to take that child and put it in an incubator. Nobody is ripping the child apart.
I think that's clear. Members, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have completed the agenda that we have for this afternoon, and I wish to offer thanks for the presentations by the Reverend Mr. Morris.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, but there were 3 members of the JCHS who were down to present.
The JCF?
So Mrs. Carol Bridge and myself also had brief presentations to make. It's unfortunate that the energetic nature of the previous presentation took up so much time.
I didn't understand that. I'm sorry if we have misunderstood. I personally would not be able to stay longer. So would it be possible, do you think, for you to complete that presentation in short order next time?
Yes.
Thank you very much for
Thank
that
you very much.
understanding. Members of the committee and members of the audience who have submitted presentations, I'd like to indicate our agenda going forward with the permission of the committee. We next meet on April the 10th, when we will indeed begin with the completion of the presentation on the Jamaica Coalition. Yes? And we will follow with the Love March movement, the Lawyers Christian Fellowship, and the Gatekeepers Joytown Community Development Foundation. So what do we have next? We have Coalition, Love March, Lawyers Christian Fellowship, and Miss Shirley Richards. Okay? And on May I go forward so that everyone can be clear? On May 1st, the AIR, A-I-R, AIR Me Now, the Partnership for Women's Health and Well-Being, the I'm Glad I'm a Girl Foundation, and Ms. Claudia Williams will present. On May 22nd, if that date is convenient to the members of the committee, May 22nd, these are dates suggested by the Secretary, by the way. The Women's Empowerment for Change, We Change, followed by a joint submission from Professor Afit McCaw-Binns, Professor Wendell Abel, and Dr. Althea Bailey, and then one from Professor Opal Palmer Adisa, and the Women and Men for Women's Reproductive Freedom and Autonomy. That's May 22nd. And on June 12th, Dr. Frederick Nunes, Professor Carolyn Cooper, Mr. Romaine Stewart, and the Caribbean Association for Feminist Research and Action, and the People's National Party Women's Movement will bring our submissions to a close. I wish to, you will fit in the gatekeepers. Yes. The gatekeepers will be on May 22nd. Thank you. Now, the procedure thereafter is, having heard these submissions, the committee will make its own deliberations based on what it has heard from you all, and will prepare a report or reports, which is then presented by me to the full House of Representatives. That report is, or reports, in case there is more than one, is debated by the House and then most likely referred to the Cabinet of Jamaica for its deliberations and referral back to the House of Representatives. It is the intention of this committee to complete this exercise before the Parliament breaks for the summer. And so we are asking that people accept the time frame and designations that we have outlined. Anything else? Any other business? May I have a motion for adjournment? Thank you very much. This committee meeting is adjourned.
Deep in the forest, far away from everywhere, with a bunch of mighty little critters. They're called the Paw-Paw Bears. These are brave and fearless paw-paws, as everyone well knows. When you get in trouble, and this goes double, you call the Paw-Paw Bear. Paw-Paw Bears. Paw-Paw Bears. Paw-Paw Bears. These paw-paws pop up all around like magic. They're there. The troubles that you thought you had have vanished in the air. So don't forget those paw-paws. They'll come from everywhere. If you get in trouble, and this goes double, you call the Paw-Paw Bears. Paw-Paw Bears. Paw-Paw Bears. Paw-Paw Bears.
Dirty francers, those disgusting little paw-paws. They even smile when they're working. If it wasn't for that precious princess, they'd all be working for me. If I only had that moonstone, then